Mark Rogers TV wrapping up rivalry week. It's my favorite weekend of college football and for the most part delivered, culminating with Alabama's thrilling fourth quarter comeback against Auburn, winning 55-44. We'll discount that Oregon thumping of Oregon State as expected out there in Eugene. All right, I'll knock down my top four teams and really my top seven with some teams in place in championship weekend that could make a stir if chaos ensues. So keep in mind that when I rate my top teams, I'm not rating who I think are the best teams in college football because if you've heard me before say this, I believe it's impossible to say these are the four best teams in college football. We can only try to break down based on the wins and losses, based on the schedule, who are the four best resumes. Who have the four best resumes or track records this season? But to say these are the four best teams in college football, when, for example, Alabama's played nobody outside of the SEC, excluding West Virginia, and West Virginia's a 7-5 team. That's a decent team, maybe one of the 40 best teams in the country, maybe. It's ludicrous under this system and the scheduling of these teams when they hardly play each other. Maybe Michigan State, Oregon would be the best example of two teams in contention that played outside of conference. It's impossible to compare these teams and say these are the four best teams. What we have tasked the playoff committee to do is impossible. So we can only say wins and losses, track record, these are the four best resumes. So I believe that these are the four best resumes. If you're going to ask me who the best team is in college football, I'm going to tell you I have no idea because I really don't. And the other people out there, the analysts, are kidding you when they say that they believe that that team is the best team in college football. If you're going to push me on it, Alabama, I would say, is the best team in college football. But I don't think they've got the best track record. That would go to Florida State because they haven't lost a game. And even though the ACC is ridiculed by many, including myself at times, the ACC pulled through today with 4 wins over the SEC. Now, I will tell you in another video why those 4 games aren't as important as you may think. That said, they still played 4 games against the SEC today and won all 4, and they have played pretty well against the other Power 5 conferences, unlike the SEC, which finished at 5-6 against the Power 5 conferences, and really the best wins, Clemson and Kansas State. Probably the 2 best wins against the other Power 5 conferences for the SEC. So while we hear down the stretch that the SEC, in particular the West, is cannibalizing itself against the best teams in the country, well, we've got no reason to believe that these are the best teams in the country because they haven't beaten anybody significant outside of the SEC West or the SEC, excluding, again, Kansas State, and possibly Clemson. Clemson's okay. All right, so let's run it down. Florida State's the lone undefeated team in the country, and again, against an ACC that I don't believe is near the best in the country, but better than advertised is the ACC. It's performed well, not just on this weekend, but it's performed pretty well against the other Power 5 conferences. We'll break all that down after the season. Believe me, we are going to break down the conferences and be objective, not media groupthink perception about the conferences, but we will break down objectively how the conferences performed against one another. So we've got Florida State, again, undefeated. We're not ranking on style points. Forget the style points. Wins and losses against quality competition, Florida State's number 1. Oregon's number 2. They have the significant win out of conference this season. There is no better win against a Power 5 team out of conference than Michigan State. Let me think. Is there another one? I'm not coming up with another one. That's the best one. Winning against Michigan State at home by double digits, Oregon, with the lone loss against the quality Arizona team that has now won the Pac-12 South over UCLA, over USC, over Arizona State, 3 quality teams. We've got Oregon, again, at number 2. Alabama's number 3. The win tonight was pretty impressive. The fourth quarter showing was extremely impressive against a quality Auburn team. This Auburn team is not as good as they were last year. They cannot run it anywhere close to the rushing dominance that we saw last year with Greg Robinson at left tackle and Jay Prosh, the fullback, who is one of the best blockers in the country, and of course Trey Mason. This team is a shell of itself rushing the football. It stayed in the game based on Nick Marshall's ability to elude the rush and deliver the ball downfield to those two awesome wide receivers, Duke Williams and Sammy Coates, and also Quan Bray with some plays. So Alabama got ripped up in the secondary, but everybody's got a flaw. Alabama's not a great team. And again, outside of the SEC, they've got one somewhat significant win. And I will stand right alongside Nick Saban, who said just the other day, again, there need to be more Power 5 games. There have to be. You cannot play Western Carolina and the likes of those teams, Southern Miss, and whoever else Alabama played. I can't even remember. They were not Power 5 teams. One, at a neutral site, and judge these teams across conferences. It's impossible. Ohio State's number 4. We will discount the loss of J.T. Barrett. While everybody else is going to be speculating about the loss of J.T. Barrett, we're going to wait for Ohio State to play Wisconsin, because that's the way it should be. Not projecting how is a team going to play, so we're going to drop Ohio State because they don't have J.T. Barrett. That's ludicrous. Let them play out against Wisconsin and see how they perform against a top 15 team in a neutral site. So Ohio State, based on the performance today and for the rest of the season, they are at number 4. Again, the Virginia Tech loss is on the record. It's one of the worst losses among contending teams, if not the worst. But Ohio State has also defeated Michigan State and Minnesota in recent weeks. Baylor at 5 over TCU at 6. Head-to-head counts for me. And again, I thought the College Football Playoff Committee was painting itself into a corner when they originally placed TCU ahead of Baylor even after the head-to-head matchup, because 9 of 12 games are exact. That's the beauty of that situation. That's the one comparison we can make in all this. Baylor and TCU played each other. And other than that, they played 9 exact games. They play in the same conference. And the Big 12, unlike the other conferences, give us a true champion because everyone plays everyone. So they've got 9 exact games out of 12. That's ridiculous. That's what we need. The Baylor-TCU comparison, and TCU's got the one win over Minnesota. That's a quality win. Minnesota at 8-4 has lost to, besides the Illinois game, pretty bad football team. They lost to TCU. They lost to Wisconsin. They lost to Ohio State. So Minnesota's a good team. And TCU's got that win on their ledger opposite Baylor, but head-to-head wins it. Mississippi State's the best 2-loss team. They are at number 7. So although Mississippi State's the best 2-loss team, and again I mean best 2-loss track record, resume, they have the less of the opportunities of the 2-loss teams to do much about it because they do not play in the conference championship game. So Mississippi State is sitting on the sideline coming off a 14-point loss against the 19th ranked Ole Miss team that's much better, by the way, than 19th ranked in the country. They're better than the 19th best team in the country. Ole Miss is one of the 10 best teams in the country. But look at what could possibly happen. I know it's far-fetched, but all these 2-loss teams are playing 1-loss teams in conference championship games, or in the case of Florida State, a 0-loss team. So what if Georgia Tech wins? What if Mizzou wins? What if Wisconsin or Arizona, which already defeated Oregon, win? Those 2-loss teams would join 2-loss Ohio State and Alabama and Oregon and Florida State with 1 loss, and they would have the head-to-head. You talk about chaos. Maybe not so much chaos, because those 4 teams would have to elevate themselves, or should be elevated by the College Football Playoff Committee, if they win those games, any one of them, over their 2-loss counterpart. Current 1 loss, then they would have the 2nd loss in losing the championship game. So again, although Mississippi State, I believe, has the best 2-loss track record, they're sitting on the sideline next weekend, while Georgia Tech, Arizona, Mizzou, and Wisconsin play the big boys with 1 loss, who are vying for the college football playoff. But if any of them win and there's chaos elsewhere, they could make a huge jump. All right. Would love to hear what you have to say about the college football rankings. Give me your rankings and we'll discuss and debate it right here on Mark Rogers TV.